The reading is from Matthew, chapter 18, verses 1 through 6. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the dominion of heaven?" Jesus called a little child and set the child in front of him and said, "Truly I tell you, unless you become converted and become like this little child, you will not be able to enter the dominion of heaven. If you humble yourself like this little child, you will become great in the dominion of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me." I don't usually prepare sermons. I usually do them by spirit, but there was a few things that came through that I wanted to make sure I shared with you. I either got to stay on the move here or hold really still. I'll do more moving. When my mother was ordained a Master Teacher, the sermon that she gave is in the back of her book, and the main line was, "The only difference between where I am and where you are is that I let God love me more." And that's a beautiful message. What I want to share about my learning and my path here is that the difference between wholeness and perfection. So when I began this work, the focus was on perfection. It was a perfection path. And there was some story that we could become perfect, and that in this life people got close, and that they were our teachers. And that was a powerful inspiration. I believed it, and I wanted this perfection. And in the beginning of the work, in the first 5 years of my work especially, I spent a lot of time trying to cut things away. Cut out parts of my life that were imperfect. My desires that were out of whack. My feelings that weren't holy enough. And all these things that needed to be trimmed and cut away. Right? But over time, I got to a place where I couldn't cut anymore. Right? I couldn't cut anymore. And I felt that I was stuck with what was left. And I didn't like it. I had tried, there were habits I had or things that didn't feel holy enough. And I had done rounds and rounds of trying to force myself to be different. And what I ended up with is a stale and painful stuckness in my spiritual life, where I was at an impasse with myself. And then one day I was meditating, and God showed me enough with the cutting, enough with trying to undo yourself. And now it is time for wholeness, for acceptance. And the message that I received in the work I started to do then was identification with soul. To hold myself as soul and hold all these things about me which are imperfect and which are messy or undeveloped or kind of stuck. And God said, anything that is stuck, which you have sacrificed and you have loved and you have worked at these things, so anything that is stuck is not ready to change. And this was like this love and acceptance and wholeness of me that I remembered that all of my parts are God. They are at their core God. And so every part of me has a natural, beautiful impulse to grow. I don't need to force growth. I don't need to make myself want to grow. I want to grow. All my parts want to grow. Even the parts that are stiff and stubborn and tight and scared, they want to grow. And if they can't grow right now, they are not ready to grow. And God gave me this message, which I've shared now with my students for many years, which is the incubator of love. To put those parts of myself which were stubborn or stuck or scared or locked in a trauma that wasn't ready to be healed, and put them in the incubator of love. And I said in my heart, God, I want these things to transform, and I release them to you. I will love them, and I will hold them, and they will unfold as they are ready to unfold. And then my spiritual life came back online. This was probably about 8 years ago. And again, life came back to my spirit and my work. I had been teaching and serving, but everything got stale for a while because I was trying to still cut away. And all that cutting left my inner child locked down. Like, enough with the cutting. I'm okay. And you got to realize that I'm okay. So that's beautiful. Life came back, and the work that we do now is of wholeness. And that doesn't mean that it's not about letting go. Because if we cannot accept undoing, we cannot grow. We have to be willing to be undone. But we cannot force this undoing after a certain point. This undoing is by God, for God in us. It is the calling out of our parts from their shell of dense energy into a new life. But that has to happen in the timing of God, in the timing of your own soul. And so when we made this move in our order from our old path, the old way of doing things, into the new one, the big thing was, Mother Claire and I talked a lot, and the teachers and the shepherds and priests, is that what we're doing is we are trusting souls now. Because we had learned a mistrust of people's souls. That you had to sort of push people and corner people into making changes that they didn't want to make because we're stubborn and we're egoic, right? This is all true. But what we found is that we had cornered people into growth, and then they had grown, and it was really exciting. You know, big things happened, it reinforced itself. But then when people came out of the circle of our little group, they reverted back to a lot of these things. Because only under that pressure had it changed, which means it did not really change. It's like forcing bulbs, right? You can force plants to grow under very specific circumstances, but if you plant them outside, they die. Because they don't have that same exact pushing environment. And so we said, no more pushing with this. That we trust souls. We trusted souls to tell us when they were ready to be ordained, instead of telling them when they were ready to be ordained. We used to call people out. We said, you are starting minister training. You're starting minister training. And then we learned to relax, and there's something beautiful about that. And then said, now you're ready to be ordained, and now you're ready to be ordained. And now we trusted the souls, and we were worried at first, because what if people were really wildly wrong? We were like, yikes, right? But we trusted the collaboration, and every minister that has been ordained for the last several years has been ordained from their own guidance. And every time it was right. And if they were ready to leave our order and be somewhere else, we trusted their guidance, and it was always right. And we've had no conflict. And we have a ministry now, which I am so proud of, because we have souls that are growing of the impulse of their own soul, not by the pushing of a teacher. So, yes, we must be undone. We can't grow without being undone. But when we are undone at the impulse of our own souls and the timing of our own spiritual development, then that undoing brings new life and new life and new life and new joy. The thing that I learned in all this, the wholeness, is that the imperfection is not that important, and the perfection is not that important. That what's important is being supple. Supple is the word. That God moves. And you know what? My imperfections are no match for God's perfection. So it's okay. As long as I'm not holding on to them. And by fighting with them, I was holding on to them. And when you fight them, you are holding on to them. When we say, this is not okay in me, this cannot exist in me, then this has been given so much life in that fight. And instead to go, it is not lazy, this is not passive. It is saying, I put it in an incubator. I want it to change. And I know, my heart says, I want transformation. My mind says, I want transformation. And I say, soul, transform this, as is the timing that I am ready. And then there is new life. It's just to find out that none of it is that important. Your growth will happen naturally by spirit when we are connected in love. And when we trust our souls, then we have more and more wholeness. And there is a perfection that blossoms naturally. It becomes more perfect because it is its nature, not because it has been pushed into perfection. So I want to encourage all of us to remember to trust the movement of your soul and to primarily be nourishing your soul. Because as you are nourishing your soul and you're learning to listen to your soul and identify your soul, for those who are newer, what is the work that we do is to know yourself as soul. And that meditation that we had, this is the child. The child, your egoic child, it needs love, it needs nurturance, it needs holding, and we need to sit in soul. And from the place of soul, everything is okay. You can hold that child and hold the tantrums, and you can teach with love the ego to be in a love relationship. I experience a love relationship between my egoic self and my soul and the God self. There's a love between them all. My egoic self is a unique little creature that exists in this life. This family, this Italian weirdness, the people that I love, and the people the experience that I've had, these things, some of them will never leave this life because they're not important enough to leave this life. But they're sweet and they matter. It's a unique thing that existed in this moment. This body type, this tendencies, right? So I can love the egoic self, and when we love the egoic self, it doesn't resist so much. It feels loved, like the child. So just as when you accept any one of these, so I say that child which we accept in Jesus' name is our own child. It's the child in you that you accept. The child that is overly attached, like children are, like the complete breakdown over the toy that someone had and I can't reach, and you can go, it really, Tommy will give you a turn, I promise. Oh my God, I have to have it now. But there's something beautiful about that too. The children feel everything in this moment so intensely, right? And our egos are like that. They feel everything so intensely, and they want to protect this body so much. And when we love that part of ourselves, then that part of ourselves does not need to fight our development. And our egos can be on board with our souls. So I recommend build these relationships. So instead of this patriarchal model in ourselves of the great mind king that shall discipline all the followers of oneself and get them in line them up, tell them what to do, and make them do what they're supposed to do. You can do that for a while, and a lot of you have done that for a while, right? But it's really hard to maintain. And the peasants will rebel. You all know what the peasants are, and it's all those parts, so too dirty and too wild and too earthy to be in the guard, Eventually they will rebel, and then we will feel lost and unwhole. We feel fragmented. So instead, make a family that all these parts matter. The masculine matters and the feminine matters. The parts that are high vibrational, that are expansive consciousness, they matter. And the parts that are dense vibrational parts, they matter. I say these parts are coal a lot. Those parts of you that are dense and earthy, they are coal. And when they go into the fire, they provide so much heat. When they are ready, they will be burned, and they will bring life, and they will fuel your high end. High end, the high level consciousness, right? We all want to skip all the other stuff, tendency. Let's do that. It feels expansive. It's beautiful. It's fiery. It's gorgeous. It's God, cosmic, amazing realization. But if we don't tend to our lower vibrational parts, they make us sick. And they will prevent us from continuing to grow. So I want to celebrate this day the path of wholeness. Wholeness first and perfection second. That perfection is a natural outcome of wholeness instead of a thing to be made and forced. And I want to honor the gift of that message coming from Mother Claire as a handing down of our order. And I want to honor my teacher Peter, who taught me by experience how the forcing of perfection, where it goes. Because we all have that temptation. And I took it as far as I could take it. And that's why I know. And if I hadn't had that teacher, I would not have known that that if you take it as far as you can, where I hit is a wall in which I feel constantly insufficient. And that's where that ends. Where I feel ashamed of myself all the time because it's never enough. It's never enough. So I know where it goes. And only because I know in my body where it goes, I can be sure when I tell my students, it doesn't lead where you want it to lead. You will hit a wall at some point. So instead, the wholeness, I am wildly insufficient, and I feel great about that. Because I will never be sufficient, and I don't need to be, because God is sufficient, right? So, and I get to be myself, and I get to see these beautiful souls, our minister body, and the people that we train, and there are a million facets of God that are all unique and all wildly imperfect, and also wildly gifted in ways that no other person could be. So we come together, and I want to celebrate this unity of our expanded family, and how much I'm grateful for all of you coming together. And I honor and appreciate all of your wild perfection and imperfection, and the beautiful gifts that you have brought here by showing up and saying yes. And I want to end on saying that as in sitting with the shepherds, what I said to them yesterday was, to me, the clear mark of mastery is the yes. And that's it. The yes through the times that feel dry, through dark nights of the soul, through the time that does not feel encouraging, that does not feel fun, that does not feel like fancy or good or anything. The yes and the yes and the yes. And when that yes lands through all those layers of struggle and challenges and exquisite beauty and expansion, all of that, and the yes is so stable, that is the mark of mastery. So, and that's what I want for all of my students. That whether it's an ordination or not, every one of you is called to mastery. Whether it's initiation or not, mastery is a soul state that we are all called to. To have the yes that is stable enough. It is the river of life that will always flow. That is being a child of heaven in this earth. So I pray for that, for all the children of the earth, and especially those who have been given to me to shepherd. So blessings to you all and gratitude to you all for bringing your divine presence here, your love and your support. And I pray that we stay connected as a family in God for all of this life, and meet you again in some others, for sure. Blessings.